Hello there, all you amazing people. I'm going to talk about why Apple computers actually are not that expensive. And you may say, what are you talking about, you fool? They cost X amount of money and blah, they are so expensive, $1,000 here and $600 here and so much money. Yeah, you pay a lot of money for an Apple product, but you have to you cannot compare, let's say, a Mac Mini to the cheapest ever computer you can build on Newegg. You have to compare what does it cost to build a computer with the same specs. And in this instance here, I've linked the video down below so you can see it here. So Max Tech, I think the name is, if I can read correctly, is comparing a Dell XPS 14 versus a MacBook Air M3. The MacBook Air have 16 gigabytes of RAM. The XPS, I think, has 32 gigs, if I'm not mistaken. And he basically compares them. Good video, recommend watching it. It gives you a really good idea that you actually get a lot of value for the money, because here's the thing, the Dell XPS 14 is almost $1,000 more expensive than the MacBook Air. Could you find a cheaper computer that is somewhat comparable with the MacBook Air? Yeah, I will go out on a limb, and I build hardware, or not build hardware, I build computers for people since the 90s, okay? So I have like over 20 years of experience with buying hardware, building computers, and helping people make the right buying decision, etc, etc, etc. What I have always found, that if you take the price of an Apple product and you want a somewhat comparable product on the non-Apple side, yes, you can get it for cheaper, but you're not really saving that much money. You may save 5 to 10% of, if even that. However, the build quality is not there. You are losing out on a lot of other extra shit that, like, you may get a lot of upload. You have to spend a lot of time deloading Windows. The keyboard may be soggy and all that shit. You know, yes, you can get a cheaper one, but you are also getting a really less experience. If you go to the same price and above, you can probably find one on the same price. It's just a little bit about what you prefer in that point. But if you want someone that is as good or better than what an Apple computer is, you actually have to pay more. The ones that like I said, that cost the same, they are like, yeah, you're still getting a benefit, in my humble opinion, with build quality and stuff like that on the Apple side. And at that point, you're like, I may be willing to sacrifice a little bit on the build quality. And I know not all Apple's products have had the best build quality history. We all get that. But not all Dell computers have had the same consistent build quality either. Or HP. It's what companies do. Sometimes they have a bad batch, they do a bad design. This is not just Apple, this is everyone. And here's another thing. You can kind of see the benchmark scores here, that on single core, the Apple wins is the one on the top right. Multi-core, 1000 score plus to the Dell. But as you say in this video, the Dell is noisier, it is cooler, but it is noisier, and the battery life sucks. So not only are you paying way more money for a more noisier machine, and the battery life sucks. Hey, I get it. If you're into the Windows ecosystem, stuff like that, you may not even have the choice to go with an Apple. What I'm trying to say here is that there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Again, it comes down to people not know what the fuck they're talking about. Just putting it out there, boys. Apple is not that expensive if you compare specs for specs. It really is not. It's a little bit like buying a Dell HP, like a name brand Windows computer, versus a Chinese built off-brand computer. You pay a little bit of Dell tax, you pay a little bit of HP tax, you pay a little bit extra for it to be coming from a reputable known brand name. But if you compare the power, and you can't look at cores and stuff like that, you have to compare like Cinnamon scores and stuff like that. If you compare what the desktop or laptop is capable of from the Mac side versus on the Windows side, you don't pay that much more to getting the same specs. Personal experience, my Windows computer that I have right now cost about $200 to $300 more than my Mac Mini, entry-level base Mac Mini. The only thing my Windows desktop is better at than my Mac Mini is gaming. They render videos about the same. In other instances, my Mac Mini is actually faster. It's an M2 8GB RAM versus a 32 gig 12 core Windows machine. Yeah, I can do more multitasking on my Windows machine, but I have not had my system freeze up. I've not had a memory warning to this day on my Mac Mini. And it's cheaper than my Windows computer. That was without me having to buy a case for it, by the way. That was just me having a case and filling it in with new components. But if you are a gamer, I know a lot of you gamers out there, you love to think you're the center of the universe. Don't go Mac, okay? buy an Xbox, PlayStation, or spend the stupidly overpriced money on a graphic card. Like, if that's what you want, that's what you do. Like, if you're a gamer, don't just forget about Apple, okay? Just let us nerds that like to do coding and grown-up stuff, let's us deal with that shit. You sit and play your little cute games on your computer then, like, I know that Pokemon Go and hentai porn is just your thing. Just go nuts with that. Not Pokemon Go, just Pokemon in general, or Pals Worlds, or what you're playing, and all your girlfriend simulators on Steam. Just go nuts with those, okay? But if you want anything else but a gaming computer, and you want to compete with a Mac computer, like the rendering time is the same, the battery life is the same, the efficiencies are the same, etc., etc., etc. A lot of times you have to pay a lot of more money to get that on the Windows side. If you want a computer that can do your workload to your satisfaction, let me say it again, your workload to your satisfaction, yes, you can go cheaper with a Windows laptop or Windows computer. So you don't care if it takes a little bit extra, or it's a little bit longer, or it uses a little bit lower battery, not lower, the battery life is a little bit lower, and etc. If you're okay with those deficits, yeah, you can get a cheaper Windows computer. But there's a difference between running a computer that does your workloads to your satisfaction versus buying a computer that is basically comparable with each other. So they do things the same most of the time. And in this video here, they the Windows comes ahead sometimes, the Mac comes ahead sometimes. It depends a little bit basically on what you want. Are you willing to pay almost $1,000 more for a Windows computer that in only a few select instances would beat the Mac computer? But then you're losing on noise, you're losing on battery life, etc., etc. Like, funny enough, the Mac still beats it in rendering. At least on, I think they were using Premiere Pro. That's another thing. What if you are a video editor or rendering videos for YouTube? It depends on your software. Some software optimized more for Mac than others. Some are optimized more for Windows than others. So your software may run fast on Windows than versus the Mac version, and the other way around. And then you have to know that, you have to, research that. But as far as I understand it, Premiere Pro is faster on Mac Silicon than versus Windows, even on more expensive Windows machines. This is an interesting thing to think about. Again, you prefer Windows over Mac, cool, that's fine, that's not what we are talking about. You prefer the business model of Dell versus Apple, cool, not what we are talking about. We're not talking about the politics and the organizational structure behind the companies. We are talking about the hardware here, okay? And if you look at the hardware, Apple is not that expensive. This is their base M3 with 16 GB of RAM. But the power of a basic M chipset is more or less the same power or output performance that you get from a high-end Windows machine. So you can't look at an M chip series and say, oh, well, this is their entry level, basic M3 or M2. The laptop costs so much money. And then look at an i3 or a Pentium, or a processor like that. Says, look, I can get this for like $50. Yeah, but they're not even close to being the same power output. Another way of looking at it is like, you want a Ferrari, the entry level to get like the cheapest Ferrari is still fucking expensive, okay? And then you're like, well, look, I can get this like Ford whatever, like that costs nothing. Like, I get this second-hand car for like $1,000. So the Ferrari is expensive. You don't need it. It's not that good. Yeah, but that's a supercar. You're buying an entry-level supercar, even the cheapest fucking Ferrari, versus a beaten-down second-hand Ford. You get what I'm coming at here? If you want to see if the Ferrari is expensive, you find other cars in the same category, the same power output, the same type of car. So that could be Lamborghini, Koenigsegg, etc., etc., etc. And then you compare, okay, what is the cheapest Ferrari versus the cheapest Koenigsegg, Lambo, and so on. You don't compare a Ferrari with a fucking second-hand wife beater car. Wife beater car, is that even, I know wife beaters are the shirts. Anyway, I'm getting distracted here. You get what I'm coming at here. And I see a lot of people on the internet, they're looking at Apple versus the cheapest AliExpress computer they can find. Right now, here, we are talking about a brand name versus another brand name, with brand name quality and insurances versus another brand name quality and insurances. I could get a second-hand MacBook Air M1 for cheaper, and this XPS may beat it, but then I'm paying maybe twice the amount of money for the XPS versus a MacBook Air M1 that is only being beaten by 5 to 20%, or anything between that. And depending on what workload that is, of course, if it's 20% and if it's, let's say, gaming, yeah, you may win. But if it's like 1 or 2%, it's beating it in video editing, rendering, who gives a fuck if I paid less money? You get what I'm coming at here. But Mac hardware is not that expensive. See you all later. Bye bye.